First, I want to get to John Lee, though. John, welcome back to the program. I think people may be surprised if they listen to mainstream media to learn that transit, which is constantly being pushed by politicians in both Oregon and Washington, saying we have to push billions of dollars into transit. I mean, Seattle's and Puget Sound are right in the middle of spending $50 billion on light rail lines. They spend massive amounts of money on new buses and high-speed buses and all the rest of this. But when you actually look at the numbers, as you have done, you find that there are fewer and fewer people using transit. Transit ridership is declining. Is it unfair to put it that way?
Lars, as always, you're spot on. Earlier this week, the Washington State DOT released a multimodal dashboard. Ooh, the latest, greatest waste of our taxpayer dollars. Buried in all of that, statewide mass transit for commuters dropped to only 2.1% of total trips in 2021. That was down from 7.1% in 2019. Basically a 70% drop statewide in transit use during the pandemic. Separately, digging in, there was a report on Seattle, who we know love mass transit. Transit ridership dropped from 43% of trips to just over 18% during the pandemic, whereas single occupancy vehicle trips only declined 1%. Clearly, people don't want to ride and don't trust mass transit. They'd rather be in their private cars.
And by the way, if that's 2021, so you've got 2019, a pre-pandemic year, you've got 2021 when the pandemic was ending and things were getting back to normal, wouldn't you have expected to see transit ridership at least stay steady from 2019 or even tick up just a little bit?
Exactly right. And the reality is that most of the transit agencies are saying full ridership will not recover to pre-pandemic levels until the end of this century.
What, 80 years from now?
No, I'm sorry. End of this decade. You caught me right there. Thank you, buddy.
I was going to say, but hold on, John, we're not talking about something that's a discretionary thing, like a consumption of a certain kind of food or drink or whatever. People either have to get to work or they don't. They either have to get to school or they don't. So how is it that they still are suggesting, well, but it'll come back within, say, 8 years by 2030? What are these people doing in the meantime?
Spending more of our tax dollars. Part of that same report here in Clark County, suburb of Portland, that same WSDOT report shared that only 0.4% of trips on the Interstate 5 bridge into Portland are on transit buses. That translates to less than 1,000 people a day. And yet, as you nailed, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Team, Greg Johnson, wants us to spend $1.3 billion for a 3-mile high-capacity light rail extension into Vancouver. And that can carry a maximum of 1,000 people an hour. It's such an outrageous waste.
Well, John, it makes no sense to pump billions of dollars into a system that's seeing less ridership. I've got a theory about why I think ridership has gone down, and it's not the economy. But do you have any idea? Do you have a reason to suggest?
Well, clearly, the pandemic scared people out of being packed in tight places with a lot of other people, let alone safety concerns, both in Seattle and Portland, about being on any form of mass transit.
Or being anywhere near the city's downtown areas like Portland's downtown or Seattle's downtown because they've turned dangerous.
Exactly right. And these transit systems were all based when all the jobs were in downtown. And as we know, more and more employers are either letting their employees work from home or employers are shifting away from the downtown core out to the suburbs where their costs are cheaper and it's safer, et cetera, and there's a more reasonable level of government services.
Well, the other thing about that, if they say, well, this is from people working from home. Yeah, there are a certain number of jobs, lawyer, maybe accountant, architect can work from home. The person who works the retail job, the person who works the job where you have to show up at the office because you have to talk to customers. We've pretty well maxed that out, haven't we? And as I understand the numbers, it's maybe 20% of the workforce that can actually work to any large degree from home. The other 80% have to be at the workplace. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And as we are seeing all around the country, employers are saying, no, I want people back in the office. I want them doing the job because there's a productivity advantage to that. An amazing aspect of the reality here for C-Tran, the Clark County bus system, they are now projecting in the next 5 years, their ridership will only grow to 75% of pre-pandemic levels. So they're not even going to fully recover as to where they were in 2019. And yet during that same 5-year period, they want to spend $252 million taxpayer dollars on capital projects, expanding systems. Unbelievable.
Well, I got to tell you, John, what you've just found in that data matches up with what John Charles at the Cascade Policy Institute has found. That is, for the last couple of decades, transit ridership per capita has not been going up, it's been going down. And that's even as cities get denser, parking gets more expensive, and all the rest of that per capita use of transit has been going down, not going up. All the while, the transit agencies, especially the big ones, are saying we have to spend billions of dollars to convert to electric buses. We have to build billions of dollars worth of light rail trains and all the rest of that for a system that's serving fewer and fewer people from within the population. That's John Lee, retired airline pilot, also an activist on the subject of transit.